Hello, and welcome to the Mid-Ohio Valley Public Forum video podcast. I'm Jennifer Bryant.
And I'm Kim Van Ryn.
And we're your co-hosts. The current pandemic has changed life quite a bit throughout our country.
And this is an election year, so one of the things that's been affected is that candidates can't campaign for office the way they normally would. We hope these podcasts will help you, the voters, to make more informed choices about the people on the ballot.
And if you're a candidate and you're interested in being interviewed, you can find us on our Facebook page, that's the MOV Public Forum, or via email, that's movpublicforum@gmail.com. But you should hurry because the election's in less than 30 days and people are already voting.
Okay.
Today we'll be interviewing Natalie Tenant. Natalie is both a candidate for West Virginia Secretary of State and the former West Virginia Secretary of State. Welcome, Natalie. We're so glad you could join us this afternoon.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here. This is a good outlet for everyone, for me and for folks who are watching who haven't had a chance, which we know is difficult, to see me in person. So I like this and I appreciate it.
Well, take just a minute and give us a short introduction on who Natalie Tenant is and why you decided to run again for Secretary of State.
Okay, I'll try to make it as short. Well, folks know that I was Secretary of State for 8 years. And before that, I was a television reporter in Charleston and both Clarksburg. And even before that, I was the Mountaineer mascot, if you can believe it. It's been 30 years. And this 1990 was when I was the Mountaineer. So this was my 30th anniversary year of being able to celebrate, but we all got had to hunker down because of COVID. So that's kind of the shortened version. I'm a farm girl who grew up on a farm in Marion County. And so folks kind of know that, and that kind of will help them to remember, like, oh yeah, I know Natalie. I watched her and her husband on the morning news on Channel 8. So so that's kind of, what you've known of me over the last 30 years, basically. And I decided to run again for Secretary of State because I know the potential and what is needed to be done. And I laid a lot of the groundwork to have it done over the last 4 years, and it just hasn't taken place. I'm about innovation, and I am known as to be an innovator and someone who is going to be a forward thinker. And there were many times when I was Secretary of State and they would get national calls from people and they'd say, has anybody ever done this? They'd say, call West Virginia because she's probably tried it before. But what I found over the last 4 years is that some of those initiatives and some of those innovative ideas have not been implemented. Case in point is automatic voter registration. I worked with Republicans and Democrats to pass that legislation. It was passed in 2016, supposed to be implemented in 2017, and it still hasn't been done. The current Secretary of State blames it on the legislature that they've made the delays. Well, he asked for the delays, and it's now being put off until 2021, and that's just unconscionable. That should never be the case. It should be implemented. We shouldn't even be talking about it the same as online voter registration. So those are some of the things. I have more details, but I think we'll probably get back and forth in it as we have questions, and if not, I'll make sure I mention it.
Natalie, some voters don't know exactly what a Secretary of State does and what their responsibilities are. Could you cover that just real quickly?
Yeah, I mean, and that's it. I know that happens sometimes, and I get into talking about business and licensing and notaries and things like that, and they're like, what? Why is she talking about that? I mean, first, people think of elections. The Secretary of State is the chief election official who oversees the election and works with county clerks. You don't vote in the Secretary of State's office, and we don't count the ballots there, but you do that in the counties. But the Secretary of State oversees a lot of the deadline and the requirements that take place and make sure that they're in a uniform manner as possible and as required by law across our elections. So that's what folks know a lot about. The other is, and the biggest division is the business and licensing division. Chances are, if you're starting a business that's not a sole proprietorship, you're coming to the Secretary of State's office. That's the front lines to it. And that's why I say that I'm the pro-business secretary, and I have the record to prove it. But the Secretary of State's office also registers notaries. You know, notaries are so important for a lot of aspects of our daily lives. They also register charities to make sure that if the charity is asking you for money, that they're properly registered within the Secretary of State's office and they're on the up and up. Also, the Secretary of State registers marriage celebrants, private investigators, and sports agents. That's always one of my favorites. So, and then the secretary part of Secretary of State is like the Secretary to State government. And that's the filing and the keeper of many of the documents. And also when a state agency is having a meeting, we, the public, have a right to know that. And that's an open meetings law. And those meetings are noticed on the Secretary of State's website. So that's the secretary part that folks might think about of the office.
I had muted myself because a fire truck went by. We take for granted that you're running for Secretary of State to be of service to the people of West Virginia. In regards to the responsibilities of the Secretary of State, what are the biggest issues that you see impacting the state today?
Away from the Secretary of State's office? Is that what you mean? With
specific regard to the job of Secretary of State, I think you touched on it a little bit. That you know, there was this initiative that didn't get taken care of after you left office. It sounds like there may be some other things that have fallen through the cracks.
Okay, now I see what you mean, because I was like, what's the biggest issue in jobs? But talk about that with business. Healthcare, I'm really worried about. For West Virginia, you know, the Supreme Court is going to decide whether people with pre-existing conditions can have health care, and my 18-year-old daughter is one of those. So that's why that outside of my duties as Secretary of State and the office, that's what I am concerned about. And you know, that's why you need to look at the Attorney General's race too, and really maybe vote on your health care there. So anyway, what is a big initiative and player, I guess, in the Secretary of State's office? Well, we talked about jobs. I mean, people want good paying jobs. West Virginians deserve good paying jobs. And you can help do that in the Secretary of State's office. I told you about the business and licensing division in the office. And before I left, once again, you're going to find that this is a common theme that I say. I worked with Republicans and Democrats, or Democrats and Republicans, and we passed legislation. Well, in 2015, we worked together, and we passed legislation called House Bill 2878. And it is a forward-thinking bill. And what it required was the Secretary of State to establish an electronic web-based portal. I'm going to say that a lot, web-based portal, because I was just reading the bill again today. It says web-based 3 times in a 3-sentence paragraph. And it's like, how can you miss this in this legislation? A web-based portal. And in that portal would be the Secretary of State's office, because remember, you get registered, the state tax department, Division of Labor, and Workforce. And the reason that those would all be in one place on the web electronically is because that would help a business who has to fill out, depending on what your business is, depends on what one of those areas. Everybody needs the tax department. So that would make it an easy way to go online to this portal and get started. Feel welcome to come to West Virginia or be in West Virginia and start a business. So we passed this legislation, and I began working on it with my office. We set the blueprint out. We formed the task force with all of the 4 agencies, with representatives of the 4 agencies. And we really put a design forward for the portal that's online. And there is a portal that's online right now. It says West Virginia Business Portal. Problem is, when you link into it and you try to go to link to those other 3 state agencies other than the Secretary of State, it says coming soon. Now remember, I've been gone 4 years. And it's still not up and running. It says coming soon. Well, in the meantime, what the current Secretary of State has done is quite simply misappropriated funds. I mean, there's no other way that I can say that. He's using money to rent a building, to have building space that he says has all of these agencies in it. Well, that sounds great, doesn't it? But first off, it doesn't follow the web-based portal requirement in that piece of legislation. Second, it makes people have to drive to Charleston to have, you know, all of these folks under one roof, which that's defeating the purpose. What if you're an out-of-state company or a business owner and you're looking to come to West Virginia? I mean, why should someone have to drive from Parkersburg or Mineral Wells, or heck, why should they have to drive from St. Albans or Nitro to go to Charleston just to satisfy somebody to say we have something under one roof? And then to beat all, he says that the computer and the phone lines aren't working properly or correctly that match up the agencies within the office. And that is the case. They don't work. So here we go, 4 years later, this hasn't been done, and this is not helping business, and it's not showing a welcomeness, like, hey, we're with it, man. It's showing, hey, come drive from wherever you are to Charleston, and we'll send you from, you know, desk to desk to desk. And that's not the right thing. So that's a huge focus when I get in. Another focus when it comes to business is I worked really hard. I modernized that office and I streamlined it. And in doing so and using a lot of online services for businesses, I found that there was a transaction fee that was being charged to businesses if you were using the online services, charities and businesses. And I looked at that and a business owner said, why are you charging us? So I looked at it and I realized, yes, we are. But I thought, is the rate on return better by not having to manually input this stuff? I think we can absorb this fee. I took the fee off. He put it back on. So, I mean, that's not very welcoming. I mean, I know it's a small fee, but it's the principle behind it. So that's an issue that I see that is very big within the office. And of course, I have a lot of election advances that I would like to make too, but you ask me some more questions and make sure I hit them.
So what are your plans for addressing the issues that you've identified? And are there some other issues you want to tackle?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, going in and having the experience, and it's interesting. I was also looking, you know, we have 3 weeks left to go in looking at, you know, the final push for this. You know, I've received so many endorsements from teachers, from workers, from service personnel, from newspapers like the Dominion Post. And I was just reading that editorial that they wrote, and they're like, Natalie comes with the accomplishments that she has and the ideas of what more will be done. And she has this passion and vision, and I do. So I have a whole lot more that I can see needs to be taken. Folks will ask me a lot, what's the first is? There is no one first thing. You see what a unique office the Secretary of State's office is. There are different areas that need to be addressed maybe all at once. You know, I look at that fee and wanting to take it off. Those annual reports start coming in on January 1st or about that time. I wouldn't take office till the middle of January. And so, you know, might not be able to get that right away, but that will be a focus of mine. We're going to have to focus on the budget and stop this wasteful spending. I mean, I know that there's wasteful spending going on, and that's the first thing that I'll look at, and then be ready and prepared to present it to the legislature, and ready and prepared to work on legislation, especially coming out of this COVID election. That's what I call this, the COVID election, when there's been so many changes to state code, election code, because of emergency rules and state of emergency, that we have to make sure that the way we're functioning and working with the election is how the lawmakers intended. And I think that there will be, I guess, improvements. There will be changes. I can foresee us using absentee voting. We haven't now, say we're not in COVID, but you have to have an excuse. I can see us having absentee voting, no excuse absentee voting, and just be able to mail in that ballot. We have early in-person absentee balloting, voting, no excuse. That's the difference. I think that there will be legislation introduced again. It was introduced in 2020 about mail-in voting. So we'll probably focus on that. What I want to do and continue staying on elections a little bit, I'm going to implement automatic voter registration. It could probably be done tomorrow, and maybe not at a great time when we're right before, in the middle of an election, but it could have been done a year ago easily because the technology is there. And I know it's there because I implemented online voter registration and the same electronic transfer requirements are there. So I'll work on that. The next thing that I'll work on too is exploring that's the other thing, ranked choice voting. And ranked choice voting is an opportunity for a voter, say you have multiple candidates for one race, you can pick who's your number one, who's your number two, who's number three, who's number four. And if, when those votes are initially counted, if there's not one candidate over 50%, then the one with the least amount drops off, and then those second choices get added in, and so forth and so forth and so forth. And, will it work in West Virginia? I don't know, but we certainly can't say, no, we're not going to do that at all. That's how it has begun around the country, is by maybe Santa Fe, the city of Santa Fe, New Mexico, using it. A lot of places in Maine. So then Maine, the voters then said, we want ranked choice voting. And so guess what? Maine's going to be the first state that has ranked choice voting for presidential candidates. So that'll be an interesting one. That'll be a historic. So we need to look at that. We need to look at risk limiting audits in making an extra layer of security for our voting and our results. So I'll look at that. And that's why I just get so frustrated about automatic voter registration. We shouldn't even be talking about it. We should be looking on to the next advances that take place. I have a few more ideas. I just feel like I'm talking and talking. When you guys ask another one, I'll come up with, I'll tell you my other idea. You'll have to wait.
No, I think this is a great opportunity for you to tell us all the things that we don't know. Our conversations, I feel like, have been a real learning experience for me as a voter. There are so many things I didn't know, and being informed is why we're doing this podcast. So.
Okay. Well, a couple more things, and I'm going to get to this point. I'm not sure how much more time we have, so I want to get to this point now while I can, because this rate, I talk about all of these great ideas and all of these policies that I've put in place and how West Virginia has benefited from it and the vision that I have moving forward. But I think that right now, and maybe you all tell me, oh, well, no, you guys are you're just asking the questions. We're not having a back and forth discussion like that. But I hear from people who say, oh, aren't you running against that guy who fired all those people and cost us a bunch of money? And I say, yeah, I am. And that's what this race is coming down to, decency and dignity, because that was not very dignified. And the way that he treated those employees was not very decent, that's for sure. I mean, he illegally fired 16 people on his first day on the job and cost the state $4 million. I mean, the terrible part is he didn't interview them himself. We've been working on having a smooth transition with my team and his team. And then they came to us and said, here's a list of all these people we're firing. And it was just, I mean, that was devastating. But they fired people like Lena, who was 2 weeks shy of her 20 years of service to the state of West Virginia. 2 weeks shy. He didn't have a clue. He didn't have any idea about her because he didn't interview her. But she had worked her way up in the Secretary of State's office, serving the state. And she was gone. She was gone and jobless, without cause, without thought, without an interview. That's why this race is about decency and dignity. And it's just, and then he continues to badmouth these employees. He continues to call them incompetent. And that's no way to treat West Virginians. It's just not a way that we treat them. And so, I say, he did that on his first day on the job. Well, look what else he's doing now. He's misusing funds and by ignoring, blatantly ignoring what the legislature asked for to help our businesses. So he's misusing funds, blatantly ignoring the legislature, and hurting the business community by saying business owners, drive to Charleston so you can come here. That's just crazy. So that's what I want. I want folks to remember about that when you treat an employee like that, that's the way you're treating a fellow West Virginian when you're outside the office. So that's what I pride myself in, that the office was, when I was Secretary of State, was so welcoming and so diverse. And that's what people like to see. That's what businesses like to see when they're contemplating coming to the state.
Well, Natalie, voters don't often get the opportunity to meet candidates in person and get to know them on a more personal level. So we'd like to take a couple of minutes and ask you a few questions about Natalie Tenant as a person, not as a candidate.
Okay, I know this is kind of weird, you guys, because people know. I mean, I've been a public figure since I was the Mountaineer 30 years. I mean, think about it, a 22-year-old kid who was told to go back to the kitchen and go make babies. You know, I mean, that just helped strengthen me and build my character. And then being in the public eye as a television reporter. So yeah, I mean, there's some things that people don't know maybe. So let's go for it. Or they maybe not remember. This is fun.
Well, I'm a lifelong West Virginian. I moved away for 3 years for my husband's training, and then we moved back. I know you've lived here your whole life. I've mentioned you to my daughters over and over as a tale of perseverance, and look what you can do. You can even be the Mountaineer because Natalie did it. So in addition to all of the things that you're passionate about the Secretary of State's office and West Virginia in general, what would you say you're most passionate about?
Wow. I mean, it's hard to think about anything else in my life right now. That's the selfish part of, especially with 3 weeks to go. Come on, you guys. All I'm thinking is this campaign. I take that back, though. I'm sitting here in my dad's house because he's 92 years old, and he's had somewhat of a rough summer. We thought we were turning on his 92nd birthday. He celebrated by taking a wonderful fall. And, didn't break his hip, but bruised his hip, broke a hand. So we've all been rallying around him and have been with him kind of like 24/7. And then, just slowed down the last couple of weeks. So is it a passion? It's a responsibility, but, I don't want to push that responsibility off on anybody else other than family members. So that's been a focus for a little bit. I mean, family obviously is. I have an 18-year-old daughter who is in college. She's a freshman this year. And so I guess I am that sandwich generation that we talk about. And those are always my concern. I mean, even out campaigning, it's always like, is my dad taking care of him? Is my daughter taking care of? My husband, he's can fend for himself. It just goes that way. I mean, he can do this. And now my daughter is kind of the same way. All right, she's in college. I'll see her in a couple more weeks or a month or so. So I guess that's a passion right now. That was the question, right? Do you want to know about my new little, and I've done a poor job this year because the campaign's taken over. My new little passion is growing lavender. I've been contemplating this. What is this, 2020? So 2019, even before that. And I went to one of the WVU small farm something thing at the Civic Center. And I just happened, because people know me from being a television reporter, being Secretary of State. They're like, "What are you doing, Natalie?" I'm like, "Oh, I'm just looking at this, seeing what farm, what they're doing with lavender." Because I thought about lavender or hemp. But then hemp became, there's no way I could do hemp because I just can't concentrate on it as much. Like when you grow hemp, you have to be ready to harvest it at the right time and not let it go farther than that, because then it becomes, I don't know if it becomes marijuana or it becomes something too much THC or something like that. So lavender's kind of been my thing, but I had a lot of lavender this fall too. And I cut it to make sure the plants were healthy, and then didn't really do a great job in drying it out. And, so I'll get back to that. I'm sure I can up to my other passion too. There was something else that I've been, I wanted to learn to play guitar, and, you know, as a statewide candidate, can I let his secret out? I don't think Ben would mind. We kind of, Jeff Wade is this guitar teacher in Charleston, and he is so difficult to become a student of. So I finally got a slot. And so this was, I guess, months ago. I mean, it had to be almost a year ago, and I got a spot. And so it's like, oh, you got a spot, you better keep it, but now you're running for office. And then he tells me, oh yeah, Ben Salango was one of my students, but he had to give it up because he's running for statewide office. I tried and tried and tried to stay on, but I had to give up practicing and having guitar lessons because I'm running for statewide office too. So that's kind of my
quite the band. You know, Ben plays guitar and you're learning, and then Sam Petconk plays banjo, I think.
Oh, wait, listen, we don't stand a chance with that song. I can carry his banjo for him, and then yeah, there's no way. Like, I can't really play. I can play like Away in the Manger. That's when I started. I guess I started like right before Christmas. And I'm like, yeah, give me some Christmas songs. I'm making my family listen to me. So around Thanksgiving, we always have to say what we're thankful for. And I went and played Away in the Manger for them. They were not impressed. I mean, they didn't even give me like, yeah. We're hardcore in my family. I'm the youngest of 7, and we're farm people. So you don't get a whole lot of compliments thrown around. You really don't. And so it's always hard. I only have one child. It's always hard. She doesn't get those compliments. Like, Delaney, I wasn't raised that way. You do what you do because you were supposed to do it. You're not going to get a compliment.
So what qualities do you most value in the people around you?
Oh, like at the office, like workers.
Or just in your life in general. What qualities do you like to see in the people that surround you in your life?
I think they're kind of the both. And this is what I love about a work environment. And this is what I told the employees the first day on the job back when I started 2009. You know, that I would help to cultivate them, that they would get to learn. We'd be this best Secretary of State's office, and I wouldn't knowingly ask them to do anything illegal, unethical, or immoral. And I always, and this is what I do when I interview folks too, because sometimes, you know, and I recognize this even as I grew as Secretary of State, that it's, you know, I still only see myself as Natalie. Goofy, awkward, you know, naive, all of those sometimes, but someone else doesn't see me that way anymore. I mean, they see me as the Secretary of State. So it's, you know, the higher the position, the heavier the words. But I would tell them in an interview, I need you to be a devil's advocate for me. I love someone who's a devil's advocate, not someone who's a jerk about it, but like, hey, Secretary, have you looked at it this week? Because this way, because a devil's advocate is someone who has your back, who's questioning you in a manner in which they have your back, and they're showing that. And being a devil's advocate takes courage, and I appreciate that too. And I like to debate. I might even say I like to argue too, but you argue behind closed doors. But once you hit the door to walk out, we're all in unison after that. So that's why it's important to develop an environment that you can have that respect and that security, that I'm not going to retaliate against you, or I'm not going to hold it against you if you tell me what you're doing is not good. So that's kind of where I come from on a work side. And I think that's from a family side. I always love a good debate too, because, and, you know, in a protected area where, you know, you're giving me what the devil's advocate part too, also. So that's what I guess I appreciate that, you know, and all the other things everybody says they want to. Love and understanding.
We hear honesty a lot, but I'm not sure people always really appreciate honesty.
That's the devil's advocacy part. I think I'm asking it in a different way, in a sense, that because honesty, you can be blatant honest. Like sometimes, I mean, you have to, I mean, yes, you're honest. Yeah, I mean, that's a hard one too. I mean, I need it to make sure that I'm really not making a huge mistake, but yeah. Come with a solution too. Constructive criticism is always the best, right? And that's hard.
It is. Yeah. Well, with that, we've come to the end of our conversation. We'd like to give you a few minutes to tell us and the voters anything else you think we may have missed, including how to get more information on you, find your website, Facebook, get a yard sign, etc.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, thank you. I mean, this is really good to be able to do this, because we don't have as opportunity as much anymore. I mean, I realized, especially coming down these last couple of weeks, it's like, I didn't see that person. I always see that person. I got to give them a phone call. It's like, I always see that person at X event, and we always talk about this, and then we move on and say, this is what we're going to do about it. And then we accomplish that task or get ideas. And I just haven't been able to see people. But I want folks to know, I want you to know that I'm running again for Secretary of State. Obviously, you can see what my ideas are, not to take it back, not to say, oh, I want it back. No, to take things forward. I feel like he's already taken it backward many years. And so I'm running because I believe, like you do, that we should have a West Virginia that welcomes businesses and diversity, that respects workers and embraces innovation. And I've shown that over the last 8 years when I was Secretary of State, and how I'll use it. And I'm proud of what we did. I'm proud of the way we treated people. And that's why it comes down to decency and dignity. And I know that we can do this. Like we are proud people. We have a great West Virginia spirit that sometimes has taken a hit, but we can get that back. I believe in what we do in West Virginia. And I say this, I will be brave so West Virginia can be bold. Now, it's not just a tagline for me. Like the example was, I was brave 5 years ago, and even longer than that, online voter registration was a fairly new thing. And there were some folks who were like, no, we don't want it to go through the DMV. We don't want to have online voter registration. And I knew that I had to be brave because I knew we could do this and needed it. And thank goodness I had that courage, because now we're using it in this time when we're all on computers and on technology. So that's what I mean by that. I have specific examples of how I'll be brave so West Virginia can be bold. And I know that it takes courage, vision, and most importantly, it's going to take cooperation. And I think I've shown that too with all of the initiatives that I've put in place working with Republicans and Democrats in the legislature. So I'm back again asking folks for your help and support. Please put up signs. I'm finding that is one way that people feel like they're involved and they're using. I mean, we have more signs than ever before and more enthusiasm for signs than ever before. Go to my website, natalietenant.com, and you can sign up. You can donate if you're able to, because that will help. We're still buying all kind of media, digital media, radio, TV, signs, handouts. I'll be honest with you, I still need some more money for like direct mail pieces and handouts that we would give to folks. So that would be great if you could help me do that. What else? I want you to get registered to vote. The deadline is October 13th. So you may be watching this as it's recorded. So October 13th is the deadline to get registered to vote. Apply for the application. I am really worried about this COVID. We're in worse shape than we were in the primary election when applications were sent out. This time around, the Secretary of State, Mac Warner, pulled the rug out from under voters. So now they can't get those applications sent to them like they were before. You have to ask for them. You have to be initiated. So I'm worried about that. So that's why I'm saying register, ask for an application, vote it, and send it back. We don't know what's going to happen on October 21st for early voting. Early voting is October 21st to the 31st, obviously election day, November 3rd. So play it safe. Don't have to choose between your health and your right to vote. And that helps me. The ultimate way is just go vote and go vote for me. And I'd really appreciate your vote once again.
All right. Thank you, Natalie. We're so glad you could join us this afternoon. Good luck with your campaign. And again, we appreciate you coming and talking to the voters about your candidacy.
Thank you.
With that, everyone, stay safe and wash your hands.